When I was a kid, maybe around 10, my paternal grandpa asked my parents if he could take me out to lunch so that we could talk. Now, I remember this because it was such a departure from his usual approach, which was kind but aloof. Anyway, he took me to the only restaurant in the tiny town he lived in, and after he ordered, he said the strangest thing. Well, it was weird at the time to me. He said, "John, I have learned a lot in my life about how the world works, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that the most important thing a person can know and remember all their life is this. It's all about perspective." He told me other things that day, but none of those stand out as clearly in my mind. But that phrase, "it is all about perspective," has echoed in my head for the last 30 or so years, and I still think about it today, years after he passed and decades since I last saw him. I wanted to try to make this video more authentic, so in this video, we'll talk about what perspective is, as defined quickly, and then we'll look at how one can use the concept of perspective to have a better understanding of people and society. And finally, I'll show you how to use perspective as a powerful tool in your everyday life. In the conclusion, I will go over some ways that you can practice using perspective to improve your daily life. Usually here I'd tell you how I was born in 1980 and consider myself part of the Zennial generation. But the reality is that all you need to know is that I make these videos because I want to, and will continue to cover topics and concepts that I'm interested in from a philosophical standpoint. But I do encourage discussion, so if you disagree or have a perspective to share, let me know in the comments. Finally, before we begin this video in earnest, I do ask that if you're new here or you haven't subscribed yet, please consider hitting that button. I can only prove to YouTube that my content is good with your help. Now, let's move on to the first part where you and I will explore what perspective is. Part 1. What is perspective? Perspective is something that we intuitively understand, and I think most mammals understand that they have a particular view of the world and know that it varies in 3 or actually probably 4 dimensions. But I can talk about the abstract definitions all day and never get to the point, so let's turn to trusty old Merriam-Webster's for the official definition. Even Webster seems to have had some trouble limiting the explanations for the term perspective as a noun, since there are 4 unique definitions. The first definition is a mental view or prospect. Another definition is the technique or process of representing a plane or curved surface, the spatial relation of objects as they might appear to the eye. You know, like this painting. Third, and much closer to what this video is about, goes like this: the appearance to the eye of objects in respect to their relative distance and positions. Now, all of these are great and do cover many of the aspects of perspective, but what I want to talk to you about here is closer to the 4th dimension Merriam-Webster provides. The interrelation in which a subject or its parts are mentally viewed, or the capacity to view things in their true relations or relative importance. So you see, there are many ways of looking at the definition of perspective, yet somehow you intuitively know what your perspective of everything is, and that others' perspective is, in fact, different from yours. The problem is, as I've seen in my 40-odd years on this mortal plane, that most people have a penchant for ignoring anything but their perspective. That is what leads to main character syndrome and arrested development. The inability to accept that your perspective is not the only one in the universe. For those aware that perspective matters, let us move on to the next section where I'll show you how considering and understanding perspective can significantly improve your interpersonal interactions and relationships. Part 2. Perspective helps you understand others. You, my friend, are exceptional. You know how I know that? You made it past the first section, and if I'm to believe YouTube statistics, that makes you one of a very select group who makes it this far in my videos. I also know you're special because my statements about perspective in the previous section didn't bother you enough to keep you from going on. Since you're so intelligent and curious, I'll share a secret trick I've had since that fateful day when my late grandfather took me out to lunch. Now, the secret is not really a secret, but even still, most people seem completely oblivious, which means you have a superpower. I'm referring to perspective as that secret superpower, just in case that wasn't completely obvious. Now, if you're as smart as I think you are, then you've probably been at least subconsciously using your understanding of perspective in your everyday life. But you can use this power consciously too, and you'll be shocked, if you've never tried this, to find that your tolerance of people and society will be astronomically more grounded and relaxed if you embrace the reality of other people's perspectives. You see, in any situation where more than one person is involved, there are more perspectives. With each individual added to this hypothetical situation, the more those experiences and therefore perspectives vary. But if you can stop and consider things from another person's perspective for just a moment, there is a strong likelihood that you'll empathize with them more than you're annoyed or disgusted. We are loath to remember that our first-person perspective is unique and is colored not just by your physical vantage during an experience, but also by your state of mind, past experiences, current state of sobriety, and 100 other factors, all of which color your unique perspective. Just like those same variables affect every person's experiences, making their perspective unique to them and them alone. Now, you can see what I'm talking about. Attempting to understand another's perspective can drastically affect how you see others and help you better understand their reactions. But there's more, because once you've mastered using your understanding of perspective to improve your relationships, it becomes a powerful tool. Let's explore that in Part 3. Part 3. Perspective can be a powerful tool. You made it past the halfway point and impressed me with your ability to focus and pay attention. Because you are one of the select few who gets this far, I will go ahead and reveal more powerful secrets of perspective, and that is, I think, what my grandpa was trying to teach me. You see, once you've genuinely, at your core, accepted that the perspective you experience is unique to you and different from everyone else's, then you are already several steps ahead of the average person. Accepting that the world doesn't revolve around you gives you a more realistic and helpful view of the world than most people. You can use this new viewpoint to your advantage, and here's how. By understanding other perspectives and attempting to see things from different angles, you can frame anything to make anything appeal to anyone. This approach does take some self-discipline, and it can be pretty tricky to contort your perspective to understand that of another, but I can confidently tell you that the more you practice, the better you'll get at it. There's a roadblock, a problem that stops most people from accepting and understanding that perspectives exist beyond their own. We as people have an inbuilt fear of losing ourselves. But I argue that this fear is misplaced and misunderstood by our conscious minds. The reality is that the more we use our minds, the more elastic they get. I think the easiest way to illustrate this is to look at the practice of meditation. When learning to meditate, one of the first steps is to clear your mind, to make your conscious mind completely blank. This initial act is what stops most people from achieving a meditative state. People are inherently scared of losing their thoughts while simultaneously fearing being alone with those thoughts. Knowing this about most of humanity gives you a decided advantage over everyone else. Those who go beyond the initial lessons you master in meditation will quickly realize that you can burn those thoughts away and it won't change you. It won't change how you think, and it certainly won't have any adverse effects. Masters of meditation have better control over their bodies and minds than others. You, however, are unique and curious enough to search for answers. That means you are easily intelligent enough to use perspective to improve your life today. In the conclusion, I will show you a few ways that perspective can be used as a superpower. Conclusion. We've discussed perspective and how we can all use it in the last few sections. And by this point, you know more about perspective and how it is a tool we can use than most people worldwide. You are now part of an elite club of people capable of empathy, understanding, and human kindness. Now, I did promise a few tips on how you can use your newfound perspective-shifting abilities to improve your everyday life, and I have two to share with you here. But before I do that, I want to ensure that you fully understand that there are no limits on how you can use perspective to improve your life. These are just a couple of ways. Arguments. We all get into arguments, online, in person, on the phone. Hell, I've been in arguments with news articles in a room alone. But we all seem to forget that things happen differently for different people. Before you let yourself get upset at some ludicrous viewpoint or opinion, stop and consider just a moment their perspective, their biases. You are significantly more likely to come to a peaceful resolution if you approach the problem from multiple perspectives. You'll see great success if you lead the one you're arguing with to the most logical conclusion from their own perspective. Memories and experiences. I did an in-depth discussion about experiences and perspectives in this video, but people experience different things differently. A good example is a childhood memory that when you ask your parents about, they have no recollection of. It's not that they're going senile, hopefully, and it isn't that you remember something that didn't happen. It's simply that the moment was more meaningful for you than for them. That leaves you with a strong memory that no one else corroborates. Remember this when you read a negative review on something you love, or when your partner isn't enjoying what you're doing as much as you are. They have a different perspective. And if you consider it, it will make everyone's lives better in the long run. There are countless more ways that considering perspective can impact your life and the lives of those you interact with. But if there's one thing I sincerely hope you remember from this video, it's that same thing my grandpa implanted in my head. It's all about perspective. Thank you so much for watching my video. You who hear this are in the most select group that watches these to the end. Thank you for supporting my art. Unlike most others, this video was almost entirely written using my own life experiences as the source. So instead of checking out the links to references, why don't you check out one of my other videos, or the playlist linked right here. If you're new to the Zennial Philosopher, or for some other reason haven't liked and subscribed, I ask you kindly to do something even rarer than getting this far into the video and help show YouTube that my content is worthy of a larger audience. Thanks again, and I hope you have a wonderful week.